Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and today I'll be bringing you my RWBY Volume 8 Episode 3 breakdown. Now, like I promised in the last video, I'm going to be adding more reference images and or clips into this episode. And this episode, which is titled Strings, for reasons that we'll get into later, revolves almost entirely around Amity Team. This being Ruby, Weiss, Blake, Nora, Penny, and May. I've changed the name from Atlas Team to avoid confusion with the soldiers and that of Atlas who were working with Ironwood. And bits of Team Atlas have been changed around as well, though I'm not going to get into it for spoiler's sake. Now, the episode opens with Ruby's trip up the dust chute. We hear her bumping around and grunting a few times before the Atlas end opens and she staggers out. And we can see that almost everyone else is already up there. We see that Weiss is not exactly happy with what Nora did to her in the last episode, and is currently pulling on her ear as punishment. We then see Blake stagger out of the tube, exclaiming her immense dislike for the trip, and that she's glad it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because she never wants to do it again. May asks Penny which way they need to go to get to the security terminal in the, facility, and Penny uses her robot abilities to scan through the walls, getting the layout of the base and seeing where all the workers are. And the way she does so looks very similar to the train station scene in the first Matrix movie, where Neo sees the outline of everything in green code. She then proceeds to plot the route that they need to take out loud in a more advanced version of the Konami code.
We'll cross the bridge, then go left, straight, left, up, right, straight, left, left.
Which I am aware I misquoted during my reaction. I said up, down, left, right, A, B, select start. Not up, down, left, right, B, A, select start. She also tells May that to call her Penny, not Robot Girl. The last we see before the scene cuts is May activating her semblance and then walking towards the door. And something I felt needed to be noted is that the subtitles list May's semblance activation noise as device whirls. We then cut to the inside of the elevator, with the group standing awkwardly in silence before the door opens and two soldiers walk in. Now I just want to say that this elevator ride completely contradicts Penny's floor plan of the trip, because she says they needed to go up twice. However, the elevator dings twice, the soldiers enter on the third ding, and then they leave on the fourth ding, meaning that each ding indicates a different floor. So they instead went up 4 floors and later had to go up another small flight of stairs. As the soldiers are walking in to and standing within the elevator, we hear a little about the attempts to breach Salem's storm. The male soldier says that any ship that attempts to get close to the storm gets shocked out of the air, and the female says that the fact that those Grims are just waiting there is worse than if they were attacking, which is probably because it's such an unusual sight when dealing with Grim for them to hold back. That's all we hear from this conversation, because the elevator has reached the floor that Amity team is getting off of, though they don't make it off before Nora presses all the buttons in the elevator.
Sorry it took so long. Someone accidentally hit all the buttons on the elevator on the way up here. It wasn't me.
We then jump ahead to when Amity team reaches the first security checkpoint, and P3N3 pulls a Star Wars and produces an access plug from the inside of her index finger. We see that Penny is bypassing the hand scanner using a digital replica of her father's handprint. And we see his credentials flash up that he has level 3 clearance, which Penny probably had to use her father's handprint, despite him also being a fugitive, because, well, it's the one they have direct access to, and, well, she couldn't exactly waste the time to scroll through the registered handprints to find one that isn't already logged into the area that would be logging into the area soon. So she went with the one that she knew. Penny says that all they have to do now is to get through Central Command and they'll be at their destination. But May says that she wouldn't be able to use her semblance in such a way that they'd be able to get through without either bumping into someone and accidentally pulling them into May's semblance. So Penny suggests using RWBY semblance, which she describes as RWBY breaking her apart into her molecular components and then reassembling herself at the endpoint. Though it doesn't explain the red swirl or the rose petals, he teasingly remarks at this revelation that Penny figured out RWBY's semblance before she is, and RWBY retorts by saying, "Blake, she knew you were a faunus before I did." It then cuts away to a door opening and James stepping through, showing some minor discomfort with his new arm as he enters. He asks the person in the room if they've made any progress, and the camera pans over to show Watts at his scroll display typing out lines of code while pictures and videos of Penny are up on the other screens. Now, I was hoping that this wasn't going to be the case. I was hoping it was like some interrogation scene that Watts was being taken to, not him being used to hack Penny, but I'm also not surprised that it happened. James then threatens to get the soldiers to motivate Watts again, this being by hitting him with their guns, if he's not up to the task, but Watts says that given what we're after, I've got all the motivation I need. This is troubling me for a number of reasons. The first being that James is willing to hack Penny to make her comply with his commands, thus reducing her to a being less than human that he sees isn't deserving of free will, though with the way he's acting he doesn't see many people as deserving of free will unless they use that free will to agree with him. The second being that he would enlist Watts instead of one of the other Atlesian scientists, because there were 3 other people in that picture. There was Pietro, Watts, and 3 unknowns, who were all part of the same science team and working on their own scientific endeavors in their free time. And the third is that Watts is willing to do this without coercion. Well, much coercion, meaning that there's likely some nefarious twist that he's going to implement when he actually hacks Penny, and the fact that James left him alone in the room with soldiers who likely don't know what he's doing entirely. Luckily, however, Watts is unable to crack through any of Pietro's work as of yet. James says that he trusts that Watts will be able to come up with some solution, and Watts calls him out on his trust as the camera pans to show that there are 4 soldiers currently pointing their guns at him. A warning then pops up on Watts' screen, alerting him and James to the fact that Pietro's credentials are being used within the facility. So I just want to point out that even though Watts is going to add something to Penny's code to make it so that she's allied with Salem, it's also, I'd say, a high 80-90% chance that once Penny is in Atlas opening the vault for James, he's just going to turn around and shoot Watts in the back of the head. It then cuts back to the military compound as Ironwood announces over the speaker that there is a security threat in the compound and lethal force is permitted against any intruders. Penny alerts Amity team that the pneumatic tubes have been locked down, and May says that they passed the hangar and they should go steal an airship and get out. However, the others decide that it would be better to continue on with their plan as they have gotten this close. So Nora comes up with an idea on how to do so. May then sneaks into Central Command on her own and trips over an employee, who's named Bill, that is carrying a cup of hot coffee. This causes him to fling his #1 dud mug across the room and spill it on one of the consoles and another employee's crotch. This causes all the workers to start having a go at Bill, which causes an adequate distraction, and they first point out the sign that says no food or drink in Central Command. However, this sign is hand-drawn and is a parody of the Jaws poster, with the food and drink serving as a placeholder for the swimming female and a grim shark instead of an actual shark. They then point out the fact that he's always arriving late, then something about his co-workers, but this gets muffled as the guy who has had his crotch burnt starts yelling and runs out of the room. He runs past the rest of Amity team, who take this opportunity to sneak in and up the stairs. As they reach the top of the stairs, we hear the workers are still having a go at Bill, mentioning something about the fridge, likely eating other people's food out of it, and that he puts salmon in the microwave, which, up until that revelation, I was feeling bad for Bill, but not anymore. Bill's an arsehole. When Ruby drops Amity team out of her semblance, we see that Weiss, Nora and Penny are looking at Ruby with smiles on their faces, while Blake is clutching the wall and looking shocked. This scene reminds me of Catra's reaction to experiencing Glimmer's teleportation in She-Ra, and I believe this was meant to be the case because Aaron posted this clip on her Instagram story with the caption "Told ya" next to a small picture of Catra. The group then walk across a bridge and come to the second security door. This one defended on both sides by an electric barrier. Penny does her finger jack thing again, deactivating the barrier and opening the doors long enough for them to all enter the security room. Penny and Ruby walk up to the terminal, while Blake, Weiss and Nora head off to the other side of the room. Penny then sits down in front of the terminal and calls her dad to tell him that they're in place, and Pietro acknowledges this by taking temporary remote control over Penny's body. This turns her eyes yellow with larger pupils and makes all her movements more jolty, including the movements of her eyes. He also speaks through Penny to inform Ruby of what's happening. As the 3 of them are working at the terminal, we cut over to the rest of Amity team, who are looking bored over in the side of the room. Blake is the first to talk voicing her concerns about how the others are doing, singling out how Yang and Ruby have never fought like this before. But Weiss reassures her that their relationship will be okay, because sisters fight sometimes, and they sometimes have two different ideas on what's the right or best course of action. Nora backs Weiss up on this, then talks about how the other group will be physically fine as well. Jean is a great leader, Oscar has grown a lot, and Yang will be able to handle protecting them if she needs to. Though she doesn't say anything about Ren, which Blake and Weiss simultaneously about. Nora realizes that by not saying anything about Ren, she's saying more than she wanted to, so she tries to think of a way to describe Ren, but fails, admitting that she feels she doesn't know who Ren is anymore, and because of this, she feels she doesn't know who she is anymore. Weiss tries to comfort her, telling her that to do something that only Nora can do, while Ren is away with the other team, but Nora says that all she's good for is getting strong and hitting stuff. The girls make to comfort her, but are interrupted by Pietro finishing what he was doing with the terminal. Weiss is confused as to why Pietro's voice is coming out of Penny, who is explaining that now that Penny has a copy of the launch sequence, they can hook her up to Amity, and it will be able to read from her rather than prompting Ironwood's terminal. Penny then says, in her own voice, that once Amity is launched, she'll head back to the others to help everyone, but Pietro says that he thinks it best if she stays with him on Amity with Maria. Ruby and Weiss agree with what Pietro is saying. Blake just changes the subject by saying they should go, and Nora just remains silent. Penny reopens the door, voicing her desire to not have to go up with Amity, but before anything else can be said, they notice that on the other side of the door is the Aesops. Harriet tells Penny that it's time to come home, and Vine steps forward to be the voice of reason. He tells Penny that she needs to come back because circumstances have changed since their last interaction, this being Salem's arrival, but Penny rebuffs this by saying that if Ironwood still plans to abandon Mantle, nothing has changed. So Vine, he tries to start manipulating her emotionally, saying that he thought she was meant to protect people, not hurt them. She tries to say that she'd never hurt people, but Elm steps forward and blames her for the state that Winter is in. And Harriet builds off of this by making it seem like Penny attacked Winter or didn't defend Winter from Cinder just so that she could get the maiden powers herself. Mara tries a softer approach, saying that the way to save the most people is to get the relic into the atmosphere, and then she won't have to go with them. Well, that's more he was implying that once the relic's up, then it doesn't matter what she does, she can go down to protect people if she wants, but he's interrupted by Ruby saying that once the relic is removed, no matter where they take it, Salem will eventually get it, which is a complete contradiction to her argument as to why Penny should go up with Amity. Because if Salem can get the relic in Atlas while it's in the atmosphere, then Salem can get to Penny while she's up in the atmosphere. This pisses Harriet off even more, and she threatens to throw Ruby in jail next to her uncle if she says another word. Ruby starts getting into her attack position, but is stopped by Penny, who walks out to attack the Aesops herself. This was a mistake because as soon as she has cleared the doorway, Harriet presses a button on her remote and the door closes, but doesn't stop Penny's plans to attack. In fact, it may have made her resolve stronger, as this is when she activates her maiden powers. The majority of the remainder of the episode is 2 fight scenes, so I'll just give a quick play-by-play of what happens. Penny blasts the Aesop's back with wind magic, then turns it into a wind funnel. Vine uses his semblance to grab the railing. Marrow almost flies off, but grabs Elm's hammer as she roots them into place, and Harriet runs against the wind. Vine then jumps up and over Penny, who tries to melee him, but is distracted from Harriet, who takes the opportunity to run up and land a few hits on her. This is before being clotheslined by Penny. Elm then hits Penny with one of her rockets as Marrow runs in to attack her. Penny flies up and calls down a rain of hail, distracting Marrow enough for her to rocket kick him off the bridge, but he's grabbed by Vine and not so gently brought back up onto the bridge. Harriet then jumps on Elm's hammer and is then flung towards Penny in a modified version of the fastball special between Colossus and Wolverine. It quickly cuts to the rest of Amity team trying to use Weiss's Armagigas to try and break down the door before it cuts back to Penny. Vine tries to use his weapon against Penny, but she easily dodges and parries several hits against Harriet before being grabbed by Elm. She stops the wind and the Aesop's think they've won, but are then blasted back again by Penny's magic. Marrow throws his boomerang at her and knocks Penny off the bridge, but she obviously flies back up, given that she can fly both from her rocket feet and from her maiden powers, and starts charging up her triple sword lasers, this causing Marrow to use his semblance on her. Vine grabs her leg and brings her back onto the bridge. It then cuts back into the security room, where we see Nora trying to figure out a way to open the door. She noticed as they entered the room that the barrier was made out of electricity, so she repeats to herself, "Get strong," and hits stuff as she pulls out Magenhild and thrusts it into the electric barrier. A continuous stream of electricity flows through the metal hammer into Nora's body, and the lights begin to flicker. The electricity in her body eventually gets to a level that it begins to show on her skin in a crisscross of growing pink lights. Deeming this to be enough power, she pulls the hammer away from the barrier and slams it as hard as she can into the door. It then cuts back to Penny as Marrow is struggling from keeping his semblance active for so long, and Elm is attempting to handcuff Penny. However, just before she's able to click the bolos into place, the door explodes outwards and knocks the Aesop's back. They push the pieces of door off of them, and they can see Nora standing there with a doping smile on her face. The glowing lines on her body fade into what appear to be burn marks, almost but not quite Lichtenberg, and all she can do is exclaim how awesome that was before her aura breaks and she collapses to the floor. Penny runs over to check on her as Ruby, Blake and Weiss step in front of them with their weapons drawn. It then cuts to Ironwood, who angrily says that was their only chance to capture Penny, before calling all troops to converge on Amity Team's location. But before he can complete this order, Watts stops him and asks him to send a message to the Aesops. This is the second fight scene, so I'll go back to the play-by-play style. It cuts back to the fight on the bridge, with the two sides facing each other and Penny floating under a set of magic storm clouds. The Aesops get the message Harriet starts to question it, but is interrupted by Marrow accepting the terms. Penny flies towards the Aesops, while Ruby minus Yang run towards them. Marrow and Vine avoid Penny before Vine swings his aura arms and knocks the rushing Amity team members off the bridge. Penny is meleeing Harriet as Ruby, Weiss and Blake hang from Crescent Rose hooked onto the edge of the bridge. So Ruby drops Weiss and Blake before using her semblance to scoop them back up. Harriet manages to get behind Penny and grabs one of his swords, pulling the string until it snaps from her body. The rest of Amity team have made it back on the bridge, and the Aesops take this moment to escape. Harriet still holding the sword, but Marrow hesitates, looking sadly at the kids. The kids comment on how suspicious it is that the Aesops just left, while Penny flies over to Nora's side. She tries to touch Magenhild, but is shocked by it, and it then cuts to Amity team running into the hangar that May mentioned earlier. First they look around and can't see May, but this is obviously because she's using her semblance to cloak herself and the airship that they're going to steal. So she whistles them over in her direction. She starts asking if they're ready to leave, but then notices the condition that Nora is in. Penny then activates her maiden powers and blasts the hangar wall open so that the ship can fly out quickly. The remainder of this group that we see is Penny saying her goodbyes to the rest of Amity team, while Ruby promises that they'll see her soon. That's not foreshadowing at all. And flying to Amity. The episode ends with a cut to Harriet handing Penny's sword to Ironwood, who then hands it over to Watts, who says, "You know how the old saying goes, if you can't beat them, make them join you." All in all, even though this is the first episode of the volume with a real fight scene, this is actually probably the least intense episode of the three. Now, I named my reaction to this episode "Damn it, James," mainly because he's getting Watts to hack Penny, but as I mentioned earlier, he is just going to shoot Watts in the back of the head once this is done, so it's not really like he's going to let Watts easily take Penny to Salem. So it's not as big a dick as it could have been. I also like the episode because they are finally starting to show some of the drawbacks, weaknesses, limitations, and actually explaining some semblances. They did it with 3 or 4. I think it's only 3. May, Ruby, and Nora, yeah. But that's all I'm going to say about the matter. So, if you have any tips for me to improve these episodes, I think the majority will be to cut out what I'm saying, because I'm basically repeating the entire episode, and that's not really what the point of these are for. I just don't know what isn't important and what is, because the script for this is 3,500 words. Or if you just want to say hi and discuss things about the episode or anything else, comment them down below, and until next week, I'll catch you in the next one.